Porch.
Okay, and we are live.
Oh wait, excellent. Good morning. Sorry we're a few minutes late. It's been a seamless operation all morning, as I'm sure you can imagine. Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm Freya.
And I am Alex. Good morning.
And we're part of the Green Gym team for TCV Leeds, and we're here today at TCV Hollybush in Kirkstall in Leeds. And today we're going to be talking through how to build a hedgehog box, but also why you should build a hedgehog box. So I think possibly quite a lot of you have heard of hedgehogs. Have you heard of hedgehogs, Alex?
I think so, yeah, I'm pretty sure. That's like the little blue thing that can run really fast, isn't it?
Yeah, the one that collects gold coins or rings, isn't it? Yeah. No, it's not that kind of hedgehog. It's not a solid kind of hedgehog. It is the common, or less common, UK hedgehog. There's actually quite a lot of different species across the world, but the one we get in the UK is the one we're going to be building houses for today. And yeah, why should we try and build them a house?
Well, they're really endangered, unfortunately, due to a lot of the issues that we talked about in previous live streams. You know, hedges disappearing, ponds disappearing, their shelter, their food, their water disappearing. Unfortunately, they don't have much habitat left. So
yeah, and it's actually the rural habitats that are getting, so the countryside habitats that are getting worse impacted. So there's been a 97% decrease in populations of hedgehogs since the 1950s. So in the 1950s, there were sort of comfortably of a population of around 30 million hedgehogs across the UK. And then in 2018, a study that was done found that there's like around 1 million. So it's a lot.
That's massive.
So, yeah. And then since the turn of the century, so since the year 2000, there's been a 50% decline in populations in rural areas and a 30% population decline in urban areas. So the population levels are declining quicker in rural countryside areas than they are in towns and cities. So that's quite a big drop. And the turn of the century, year 2000 to 2018, so that was less than 20 years, there was a 50 to 30% decline in different habitats. And the reason for it being a decline in the rural areas is the mechanization of farming. So bringing in machinery, getting rid of hedges so that the machines can just run up and down these massive fields. And you can kind of get it from the name, can't you? Hedgehog. They like hedges.
Well, interesting enough, I've got a little fun fact to start off. They weren't always called hedgehogs, so they're not technically native to the UK. They are now because they've been here for around 2,000 years, but they were originally brought over by the Romans, and the Romans called them urchins, like a sea urchin. I'm not 100% on why they brought them over. It could have been just it happened naturally, or it could be that they thought that they were, I think they did used to eat them, didn't they?
Did they?
They did cook them in clay.
I didn't know that they were. Yeah, I didn't know they weren't native. Were they naturalized?
Yeah, they were not. Yeah, so now they're.
I'm gonna look that up. Do a little.
But yeah, we have the Romans to thank for our wonderful little hedgehogs.
Yeah. So part of the thing with hedgehogs is they're not very quick. They're kind of evolved to have very few predators. The way that they defend themselves isn't to run away, isn't to move fast. It's to, you may know, like if you know what a hedgehog looks like, they're spiky. They've got the spines. They're famous. They curl up in the ball and just stick the spines out. And I think if people's dogs have ever attacked one, they kind of get their spines in their mouths, and that's how they defend themselves. Which means they're not evolved for a world where they have to travel big distances to find new habitats, and where they need to get away from things like cars. So all these big motorways and things and train lines going up and down the country are forming these barriers that they can't really cross. And they're pretty. I mean, the Green Cross Code stuff when I was a kid was all about hedgehogs and like, slow down, you move too fast. That one. Yep, that one. That little spout of nostalgia there. But hedgehogs, they're famous for getting squashed on roads, and that's because their reaction to seeing a big predator is to go, ah! Which doesn't work very well against a car or a train. So there's a lot of things that are really negatively impacting them, like the habitat loss, the pond loss, the building increased size of cities, but also the changes to the rural countryside farming landscape. So they're really, really endangered now. Like they're really IUCN Red List endangered of going extinct. So we want to do as much as we can to protect them. Why do we want them? You might be saying, like, they're really important. Like, if you have any plants in your garden that you're like, the slugs keep getting them, really good way of stopping the slugs getting them isn't to put down poison. That's not a good way, because that poisons the predators as well. The best way to do it is to encourage the things that predate the slugs and the pests on your crops. So that includes frogs and amphibians and things, like we did the mini wildlife pond last week, if you look back at last week's video. But also things like hedgehogs are great. They go around chomping on all the things that are eating your veg and your flowers. So yeah, what's a way we can help them? What can we do in our garden? We don't have a farm. We can't change agriculture. What can we do?
Well, I mean, one of them is give them some water. So they, obviously, hedgehogs, they like small enclosed areas that are dark, not damp, but dark. And yeah, really quick though, also, the bottom of your fence, just cut like a 20, not even 20 centimeters, just 10 centimeters, just cut a gap on the bottom of your fence so they can go from garden to garden.
Think Tom and Jerry. Think about like the little hole in the skirting board on Tom and Jerry that the mouse goes in and out of. Complete block. Which one's Tom and which one's Jerry?
Tom's the cat.
Tom is the cat. Tomcat. Yeah. Stupid question. But think of that little thing in the skirting boards that Jerry goes through to get away. Like, that's the sort of thing you want to be putting in your fence lines so that hedgehogs, and it doesn't have to be like a little dome, it can just be a little square cut out of the bottom board, and that just means that hedgehogs can get from garden to garden. I can't remember how far it is they roam quite a decent distance, like between gardens. If they map how far hedgehogs travel, there was something, a sort of great telly program about it a while ago, about them sort of wandering and how far. It was like a mile a night, or I'm making that up. That's something like that.
We'll put it in the link later.
Well, we have Hazel as tech support in the comments at the moment. So if someone might be answering as TCV Hollybush or Skelton Grange or on the YouTube, and that's Hazel. So that's our administrator. So she is there to answer questions with links potentially. Please, thanks Hazel. Whenever we're throwing out these facts that need fact checking and clarifying. But yeah, so they travel quite far. They don't just want to sit in your garden. If you've got like a pretty postage stamp size garden, which most people in cities have that maximum, they don't want to. You can make the habitat as good as you want in your garden. It's not big enough. It needs to be that they can move from garden to garden. So you need to encourage them in your garden, and you need to encourage your neighbours to encourage them in their gardens. And yeah, you may have heard about them liking to sleep in bonfires. That's something that so they like to sleep in piles of dry twigs and dry leaves, which not many people have them knocking. If you've got a normal little garden, you're not going to have mountains of unburnt bonfire type material for them to live in. So if you are to, like, they hibernate in winter, so you want to be careful about turning things like that. But as an alternative, it's to make something called a hedgehog house or a hedgehog box. So this is one that the woodwork squad's made, and we're going to do a quick run through today of a little bit of the steps. So it's not a complete how-to tutorial. We were actually meant to have Tom here today from the woodwork shop to help us out with this, like he did the bird box one a few weeks ago, but he's not actually been able to come in today. So
he sent his apologies through.
Yeah, he did. He came in this morning and sort of did some rushed helping us out to set up, but we won't do a how-to as much as we would have done on the sort of tool use and things. But for the safe tool use and measuring and things and the equipment used, if you have a look at the bird box one that we did a few weeks ago, hopefully Hazel can share the link.
Yeah, we're not going to be using anything today that we didn't use in that.
Except the drill, but we'll talk through that. And we will talk through the safety of it. But for a more in-depth sort of how to cut, how to sand, the principles are all the same. It's just we're making a different shaped thing. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
So yeah, should we have a look at how to make our hedgehog box? So we've got a plan that TCV have got of the dimensions that you need, so the size that you need to cut the wood. We'll post that in a post later that we'll share in the comments, so that will come after the video. So Hazel's answering now, but we'll also be bringing in more details, because I assume you're not sort of doing this along with us. We're not going to do this at the speed of a step-by-step tutorial with you doing it at the same time. It'll be sort of a reference for you to go back to, so you can hopefully go and make your hedgehog box with the plan that we share. So the important things you need: 4 walls, a base and a roof, and a porch. So those are the important things. Shall we talk through the importance of the different bits? Why do we need a roof?
So a roof. Even though they do live in the wild, there isn't a perfect flat roof in the wild, but they do go underneath shrubs and underneath bushes, and you'll be surprised by the amount of shelter that a few twigs and leaves can provide. It can make it really dark when they want it really dark. It can provide waterproofing when they don't want to be sleeping in a puddle of water. No. So a roof is probably the most important part.
Keeps them dry, keeps them protected. It also keeps out predators, so they don't get predated by very many things, like we talked about earlier, except for cars, but probably don't have many cars going through your garden. But what is it that they do actually get? There is one thing that predates them, and what's that, Alex?
So you might be thinking their highest predator. Yeah, have a guess. And
yeah, what do you think predates them? No Googling. Put it in the comments, anyone watching, what you think is the main thing that eats and attacks hedgehogs.
So while you're still guessing, I'll tell you.
It's wild.
It's not a cat. So I'm sure cats do terrorize them, just as cats do with every other natural animal.
It's not a pet, basically. It's not a cat, it's not a dog.
So my first
It's not humans.
My first thought...
No, it is humans, really, but like...
would have been a fox.
Yeah, that was my first guess as well.
So if you said fox, don't worry, we're on with you right now. But actually, if you've had time to guess, their biggest predator is a badger. So badgers apparently are the biggest predator of hedgehogs.
Badgers are pretty intimidating beasts.
Yeah, they're quite vicious badgers.
Yeah, you kind of think of them as cute animals of father would.
Yeah.
I don't know if that ages me, but type animals. But they're sort of happily, the wise one wears a velvet jacket. They're pretty vicious. And if you look at one up close, like they're pretty muscular little tanks. Like, yeah. So they eat hedgehogs.
If you imagine the size of a badger compared to the size of a hedgehog, that's not actually drawn together right now. So you imagine the size of a badger to the size of a hedgehog. This porch here allows the hedgehog to go in. Ideally, it would be a bit longer, so the badger couldn't even get its head in. So yeah, this means that only the hedgehog can get in. And as well with foxes, they have got smaller heads, so they might be able to get in this one. But the one that we're going to be building today, the porch is 30 centimeters long, around that, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, 30 centimeters, which means that badgers' heads, they get stopped at their shoulders and they can't get in the box. There is
a badger trying to eat a hedgehog in the box.
There is another thing you can do, where once you've built your box, if you don't have enough wood to build a really long porch, or you don't have the space for a really long porch in your garden, you can always put a partition in the middle of the box. So if you put a piece of wood down the middle of your box with then another little turning, so the hedgehog can come in and hide around this corner here, it means that the badger's head could get into this bit, but it could not get around that partition there. But we're not going to put a partition, we're going to put the big long porch.
Another thing that you do see on some designs is you see porches that have like an angle on them, so they come out and then they turn at 90 degrees, and that would be an extra step in terms of defending your sleeping, hibernating hedgehogs. Yeah, so what we've done so far is we've made, it's kind of just a square, not quite a square, but like we've got a base this size, a back this size, and a roof that's the same size. They are all 40 centimeters that way by 30 centimeters that way, and that allows enough space for quite a compact, big enough for the hedgehog, big enough for it to move around, big enough for it to get enough leaves in, that it can insulate itself. But if you make them too big, it's got to bring in too much leaf and it'll just be too drafty. So it's kind of important, it's the sort of not too small, not too big sort of thing. And you can see we didn't have pieces of wood that were that size, but what we've done is we've just got sort of a standard plank and we've cut it to two lengths the same size. So you can kind of see, as I've been cutting them to the size, and I've been labelling them. So I've got a label on my diagrams, which one's which. So I've kind of written 5, and I've written 6, and then I've written roof, just so I can keep track of the fact that I've got the right number of pieces. And then what we've done is we've got these battens. So these 2 bits of wood that are just thinner pieces of wood, and then they are just measured. So you can try and see they're slightly shorter than that length. So they need to cover this seam in the middle, but they don't want to go right to the edge because that makes it difficult to sort of slot the wood together. So you kind of want to make sure at the end there's at least enough thickness for that piece of wood.
So that can go in on top of it like that. I don't know if you can see, but yeah, so this gap here means that another bit could go in like this and it would be flush rather than sticking up out the top.
So I'm going to start cutting. Oh, I won't take that bit because then you can explain maybe the porch bit, Alex.
Yeah, so the porch, are you going to be cutting there?
Yeah, I'll
okay.
cut there. And...
I'll come down the front.
So we used a tape measure for measuring, and we used. But one thing you can do is if you need something to be the thickness of the wood further away from the edge to leave a gap, you can use this as its own measuring stick. So by putting that there, you can't really see. Can you move the camera? This is a way that you can use, if you don't have the tools, you can use what is I line up there, I line it up there, it's got that much of a gap at that end, and then I'll do, because with the roof, you want it to fit quite snugly, so you don't want it to be able to move around lots. So you want to be, where's your pencil gone? On the floor. Right, that one, there. And then we want it to be a right angle. So a good way to do that is with a saw, you just line that handle edge, and then that makes a right angle. So that's just a really quick, it's not the perfect. Good enough. So yeah, use that as a ruler, that as a set square, and then I'll cut 2 bits the same length out of that. Right, I'll let you get onto the.
Okay, so hopefully you can still hear me okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It needs doing. So the porch needs to go sort of in the hedgehog house a little bit. If it's just tacked on the front, the chances of it rotting or the chances of it getting clawed at or taken off, snapping off, are much higher. Whereas if it slightly goes into the front face, it offers a little bit more protection to the hedgehogs. So the way that I've done that this morning is by, again, like Freya said, we're using wood that's a bit wider than the plank shown here. But this plank here is going to be the top plank, and then you need 2 sides. So I've cut another like this and then an identical one for here. And when you're measuring, it's really important to remember that the porch needs to slot into the front. Where's the drill? Have you got those little screws still? Brilliant. No,
well, you're not talking.
No.
Quickly show this so I'm not making it happen for you. There we go.
So I'm going to drill the first bit of the porch on, and then I'll show you. Well, I'll tell you why. I'm going to only do one bit first. Really quick with a drill. We're using quite soft wood, and we're using wood screws. If the wood that you're using is slightly harder, or you're finding it difficult to drill through first go, you can always make pilot holes, which is where with a drill bit, you just put a small hole in, and then the screw will go in much easier.
Also, if you've not got this, a lot more people have hammers and nails than have a screwdriver, proper screwdriver, and proper drill bit. So yeah, do just use a hammer and nails to do the same thing.
Yes,
if that's what you've got.
Right, okay, so I have attached one side of the porch. I would put more screws in if I was doing this without doing it for a live stream. I wasn't rushing. But I put one side on. And the reason I've only put one side on is because I'm now going to try and fit the porch in. Because even though I've measured it perfectly, of course, the chances of me putting that on and the porch not quite fitting are much higher if this is fixed still. So I'm going to get the porch.
Which does still, I was going to get.
Oh, it does still need drilling together. But it's okay for this right now. So this is something that Freya actually showed me earlier.
We finish drilling that together first?
This, the porch, yeah?
I've left one piece left to go on to explain that bit.
Yeah?
The next stage.
Oh, it is. All right, okay. So I'm going to go up to the camera and show how that's done. I'm going to be shouting because the microphone is actually over there. So this is the porch, and the top of the porch fits in like this. So you can see that. If you look at that there, each piece is overlapping the last. So we're not building it where two pieces are in the middle. And then another bit goes on top, another bit goes on the bottom. These are all the same size.
It just makes a slightly more solid structure where all the pieces are sort of supporting each other. Nothing's sort of holding another piece together. It's all supporting each bit. It just makes it slightly more durable, slightly less squashable.
So while we've got a bit of dead air, I'll tell you some more fun facts. So another guess. I'll give you a couple of seconds this time, not a whole minute. But how many spines do you think hedgehogs have on average? Of course, it's different depending on their size and depending on whether they've had any injuries or anything. But on average, how many spines do you think a hedgehog has?
2.
No, sorry, spines like the spikes.
I know what you mean.
Oh, well, because someone earlier said to me, how many spines do you think they have? I was like, 1. They're vertebrates. They've got 1 spine. I wasn't thinking of hedgehogs having, so they're so they've got 2 spines. No, they've actually got on average around 5,000, which is.
How many hairs does human have?
Oh, millions.
Because they just have them sort of in replacement hair, don't
they? Yeah.
It's sort of because they are mammals. They're like a human is a mammal, like a dog is a mammal. So part of being a mammal is that they've got the hair, but hedgehogs sort of have the spine instead of the hair. So yeah, got the short screws for doing the battens. So let's just. So we fixed that there and there, fixed it there and there. Gonna fix it. So what I've been doing is I've been starting the screws off on a flat surface and then adding it onto there as the final stage. Ooh. Screwed it into the roof slightly. So what I'm doing now is I'm just getting the screws so they're most of the way through the wood, just so that when I get it so they're not poking out. And what that means is when I put it here, they've got less far to go. So I can sort of line that up. Oh, that's the feedback.
Apologies for the feedback. Hopefully that's killed the feedback.
So it's important to make sure you're pushing directly down with the screwdriver. you're pushing hard at the back. If you're finding it difficult and it's jumping, it's going to be good to sort of get one hand behind and push down. There we go. So that's fixed there. And then just do one last set that comes in here.
I've got to say, the drill sounds beautiful over this awful microphone. Yeah.
I'm very good at impressions of annoying noises. Oh, it does sound awful, doesn't it? Another thing is sort of trying to get having it low enough that you can get your sort of body weight and you're not twisting your spine as you're because it can take quite a lot of force, especially if you're making quite a lot of drills or you're not used to it. So just make sure that oh, that'll get the point. The wood's a bit broken, but imagine that wasn't a broken bit of wood. Cool, so we've then got quite a sturdy, apart from that broken bit, porch for the thing. So I'll hand that back to you to demonstrate where, I don't know where your bit is.
Okie dokie. So I am now missing the rest of the porch. I'm not sure where I put it. Oh, it's in there. Ever professional. Yeah, so what I was saying was, if I then attach the other bit of the porch, which I have put somewhere, I think this is it. Yeah, this is it. So if I then put this on here, I run the risk of the porch not actually slotting in properly. So what I'm going to do first, it's actually quite heavy, is get the porch and make sure that this goes on as it does, like this, and then once that's on there, I can just make sure 100%. Oh, look at that! Like it was made for it. So there we go. I might.
I feel like it's made for it, but we need to take the lip bit out of the box. So
that again.
So line it up there. We may have encountered it.
Oh, right. It's got a base on it as well, hasn't it?
Yeah. So we need to take
another bit off.
It needs to come up to about there.
Yeah. So how what?
Possibly that.
That's a bit
sorry.
much, no, it's fine. I mean, this is all part of it as well. Like, don't expect to get everything right the first time. We haven't. So, I'm now going to detach this. And should I just carry on? Or
I think it's not going to fit on here like that unless it takes a bit out. Like, it's better to take more out the top. Out of the top one,
yeah. Okay.
Than it is to take it out of the base.
Tell you what, I'm gonna quickly.
What's happening at the moment is, if you look at this,
I'm gonna run it by you.
That looks like that. Where's he put the porch? That looks like that. There's a gap at the bottom, and that's going to have to go here. So what's happening at the moment is there's a nice little drafty bit that's going to be wafting about there. So we just need to get it so that there's a cut out of this one coming down there. So this is on the diagram, these are all one solid piece of wood, but you probably don't have any solid bits of wood available, especially if you're using sort of recycled material and things. You don't want to be using sort of chipboard or plyboard or MDF or anything, because that's not waterproof. That's going to get wet and it's just going to disintegrate. So most of the sort of board that you get isn't what you want to use. So you do want to be using planks of wood if you can get some sort of scaffolding board or some recycled wood about the place. That's the ideal thing, but the chances are that's going to be in planks, so we need to attach together to make this solid piece. But that means you've kind of got to do a bit of hodgepodging. It's almost easier to make these shapes because you don't need to use sort of a jigsaw or anything. You can just do it with a handsaw. Right, so roof. Did you cut a bit aside?
I've got it. Just needs to support. This is the side. See if it fits.
Oh, I'll cut that while you do that bit.
So,
what are you doing now, Alex?
I'm measuring the porch. So the porch is, sorry, not the porch, the front face, and it was 40 centimeters. So rather than just, I'm using a tape measure, because rather than just putting this bit of wood on the wood to measure, even though you might think that that works because it's going to put the line on, if you put the wood there, sorry, if you put a piece of wood up against another bit of wood and you put a pencil on it, the thickness of the pencil actually it can throw it off quite a lot.
I said,
Well,
I said it doesn't matter that much what's up with this rough cut.
Oh, but then it doesn't matter that much. It doesn't matter that much. It doesn't matter that much.
We're not doing engineering, like it's not precision stuff. You don't have a tape measure. A tape measure is the best thing to have. But if you don't have a tape measure, I'll stop sorry to talk. If you don't have a tape measure, just use what you've got available to you. And if that is just measuring it with the wood.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, you are going to want a ruler, tape measure to do like, but these just have to be the same size. So if you think it's roughly 30 centimeters, just sort of get it so it matches itself. It needs to match itself. So if you've got one thing that's you think is about 30 centimeters and then you use that to measure everything, then that will still all be the same. So it will still all fit together.
Yeah.
And it's more important that it fits together than it's precisely 30 centimeters. Because I'm saying about it being the right size, not too big, not too small. A hedgehog doesn't care that it's exactly 30 centimeters. If it's 35, if it's 25, they're probably not going to mind. They just want a small cubby hole to hide in. Mm-hmm. So
it's not going to devalue it on the hedgehog market, I don't think.
Location.
I do like this hedgehog house, but actually it's only 1 centimeter bigger than I like.
Square footage just isn't what I asked for. Yeah, don't let things like that put you off. While we're doing a bit of soaring, we can do a bit of talking about other things you can do in your garden that can help hedgehogs. So other things you can do is you can build your wildlife pond. We talked about that last week. We talked about the importance of having a place to drink. But also, if you make a wildlife pond, make sure there's a way for them to get out if they fall in. Yeah, they're not good climbers.
The ramp is very important. Yeah.
But then the other thing that you can think about is you can think about feeding them. So feeding them, what a lot of people do, and a lot of you might already be aware of this, but it's sort of things that have been suggested in the past or things that happen in cartoons and things aren't necessarily what's best for the hedgehog. So people like to put down milk for them. Putting down milk for them is a terrible idea. They're lactose intolerant. Like most adult mammals, we are evolved to drink milk when we're babies, but we're not evolved to drink milk as adults. So it's got lactose in, which is a sugar, isn't it?
Yeah.
That adult mammals become allergic to, and humans, by persisting with drinking milk, have kind of got over that allergy. But it's not like kind of cultures that drink less milk are still quite often have higher rates of allergy just because it's how we're evolved to have it as baby food. And lactose is in milk. Hedgehogs are adult mammals. They're allergic to it. They're lactose intolerant. So putting down milk is not good for them. There's mealworms is something that people like to put down for them. That's also bad. Like it's the sort of thing that might be part of their natural diet. They will eat some insect larvae. So people are like, oh, well, I've got this for the birds. Surely that's good for the hedgehogs. It's not. In too high quantities, they might be all right. They'll be all right to eat of one or two that falls out your bird feeder, but they're not going to eat a meal of that. That's going to mess with the tummy.
It's like a, it's a treat. They're very, it'd be like if you had crisps for every single meal.
What's wrong with that?
So, yes, they need a balanced diet. And fortunately enough, a lot of us that have pets already have fully balanced, nutritionally balanced food for animals.
Tiny little
candles. So hedgehogs will happily eat cat food and dog food.
A high meat-based dog food.
Yeah, so they're carnivores. Yeah.
So some dog food is quite high vegetable content. You want to make sure that if you're getting a food, so cat food's probably the safest one, where you need to do the less thinking about it and the less checking.
The meaty jelly stuff with real meaty chunks in it.
So it's like either you might already have it if you've got pets, but if you don't have pets, then it's really easy to get from shops. Most shops, supermarkets, you can get cat food, and that is the best thing. It's the best thing to be feeding them. Another thing is they are nocturnal. They come out at night, so you might be putting all this habitat stuff in place.
Yeah.
But you're not seeing any hedgehogs, and that's because they are nocturnal. I'll talk loudly while I'm drilling. And if you see them in the daytime, that means they're not very well, for the most part. And this time of year, they are coming out of hibernation, so it's all right. But you do kind of get sometimes a spike of seeing them coming out in the daytime because they're poorly after winter, basically. If you see them in the daytime, the best thing you can do is contact a wildlife rescue. There's loads of them around. If you go on Tinterwebs, if you can't find one on the internet, or you don't, I'm assuming you have access to the internet if you're watching this, but if you're watching it on someone else's computer and you're then going to try and see a hedgehog in the wild, out and about in the daytime, locate it, take note of where it is, keep an eye on where it is, and contact a wildlife rescue as soon as possible. Because if you take it in overnight, possibly overnight you might have to, because the wildlife rescue might, if it's 10 at night, if you're on your late night dog walk, you might not be able to get a wildlife rescue to come get it. But don't warm it up too much, because if it's hibernating, it needs to stay at a low temperature so it's in its natural rhythm of staying in hibernation, because they kind of wake up a little bit, come for a little test at the water, like a couple of weeks ago where it was really sunny and we all tried wearing t-shirts for a few days and then it got cold again. Hedgehogs do a very similar thing where they kind of wake up a little bit at the end of winter as we're coming into spring. So you don't want to then bring it into a nice toasty warm house where it fully comes out of hibernation and then actually it needs to go back outside and it's then going to mess up its natural rhythms. But also if you take it in and you try and feed it and you try and make it better, chances are you're doing that wrong, and that just means that unless you're an expert, but taking it to a wildlife centre where they know what they're doing, they will do all of the right things straight away. They'll give it all of the right isotonic mixtures, get it rehydrated, get it fed the proper things, and it'll happen much sooner. Whereas it might get iller over time, no matter how hard you try. Cool. And so take it to a wildlife rescue if you see them out and about during the day. The other thing you can do is putting in little steps. So there's some great videos online. Where if you've got a set of steps that goes up the middle of your garden, where you've got your garden on 2 levels, what could be really good is sort of on one side of the steps, just putting like a brick on each side, and that just basically makes the steps half height. So a hedgehog can sort of...
A mini little staircase for hedgehogs.
Yeah. Hey, so try and find some YouTube videos of it, because it's great and everyone needs to see it. You need to see it if you've not seen it. And share that. We'll share that in the comments either now or after. So let's put that aside.
I think it might be the other way around. No.
Who knows what that is that I've just put together. So we've not got any sides for it. We've got the front for it. Do you want to attach the front to it? Yeah. So if you attach the front to it, and then we'll attach the porch in, and we'll do. We've not got, as I said, it's not a step-by-step tutorial of the whole thing. It's the pointers of what you need to do. So we'll get it far enough along that we've shown you how to do all the different steps, but not necessarily got a complete hedgehog box. To be honest, what I can do now is I can sort of measure this up. It's the right height, but I can just take off the ends, the excess that we've got once it's put together. Because it's saying about the measuring, if we'd measured this when we put it together, this bit might not have slotted in, because it's kind of got to slot in at the end here. But by having the rest of the box complete, you can measure it to go in the gap that exists. So if your measuring isn't to a professional standard, which most people isn't, it fits the gap. Like, it doesn't need to match the numbers, it needs to match itself. even if Alex said the opposite.
Yeah, don't listen to me.
Just having a squabble. How are we getting on? Yeah, we've got the little steps for hedgehogs. Leaving some dry leaves about. So we'll talk that a bit through. So they like the dry leaves. They like straw. So what you can do is you can leave piles of dry leaves near the entrance to your hedgehog box, or you can leave some in it and some outside, so they can kind of build their own nest and make it nice and cozy for themselves. But leaving the sort of, especially if you don't have trees that are going to be dropping those leaves, if you can get hold of some and put them near it, then that will mean that they've got a nice insulated bed sleeping over winter. The other thing that you could use is, if you don't have lots of dry leaves, if you don't want to sort of go to a park and go foraging for fallen leaves, is you can get straw from a pet shop. Like, that's better than nothing. It will still keep them warm. And you also want to position it. So imagine this one had the roof. This one's a complete one. Let me get out of your way.
Thank you.
So you want to position it somewhere that's stable. So if you look on the bottom, it's got these two rungs. So it's lifted off the ground, so it's not going to be getting wet coming up underneath. You can kind of see it's got a pipe coming in here. I don't know, let me come close to the camera. That bit of wood just where it's been used to store something. So, I don't know if you can see that. It's got a little pipe coming in here with a hole drilled in the outside. And what that means is the oxygen is getting to it so it can breathe all through winter. Because it will be in there, it will be hibernating as well, so it won't necessarily be registering if it's not getting everything it needs when it's sleeping. So it's got that little pipe for breathing, and you then want to put it somewhere sheltered. So like the wildlife pond, you want it somewhere where it's not going to get disturbed very much by people walking, not going to get noticed by every predator, it's not going to get kicked by the postman every time he comes to your door. So if you've got a hedge, as we were saying about habitat loss, hedges are one of the best things you can plant in your garden. For native hedges are the best, but anything that fills the function of being a hedge where birds can come in and nest, if it's got berries that animals and birds can eat, and it's got the shelter underneath it where you can put your hedgehog box in there. One thing we build quite a lot of with TCV is dead hedges or brash hedges, which is where if you're chopping down trees, or you're cutting back your vegetation in your garden, taking the woody materials that don't compost very well and putting them in a dead hedge, which is where you kind of get rows of stakes and then you infill all of this woody material in between it. And then you can kind of build you can build them round your hedgehog box. So you can pop your hedgehog box in that dead hedge and then pile your brush up round it, and it'll make this nice little cozy bit of habitat for your hedgehogs. Another thing that you can do is you can bury them. If you've got a mound of earth, you want to waterproof them quite well. So you've got you want your pipe to then come out of the ground, so there's definitely oxygen getting in. Oxygen will come in through the front, so you can bury all of it, leaving the porch poking out, and then have a mound of logs, a habitat pile, or a mound of earth, but then it's got to be quite strong. And make sure it's waterproof on top. So make sure that we used inner tubes that we got for free from a bike shop in the bird box one, and we can show you how you can kind of cut them in slips, and they make quite good waterproofing for things made of wood, especially where we've got these seams where we've attached things together. So covering them with waterproofing, probably on the outside if you're going to bury it. And yeah, I'd say bury it in logs, because then you're making habitat for lots of other things. You can
leaves, logs, sticks, twigs, natural things.
Yeah. How are you getting on?
Okay. So that's. Am I attaching it?
Yeah. I'll move that one fully out your way. Really heavy. This is not blowing away in the wind.
Is this the front then here?
Yeah. So you can see I've got these two rungs on the bottom there. And what that means is it's just lifted off the ground, which means when the hedgehog's sleeping, you know, if you sleep on ground, the damp comes up through the ground, and that just lifts it one level up so that that damp isn't coming in and getting to your hedgehogs.
1 second. I don't quite think that it is. It's right just yet. We can show you a Blue Peter one if needs be. Yeah, no, it's not going to attach. But Blue Peter wise, on live stream, it's done. Before the live stream, you can see, I'm just thinking because we need to wrap up soon.
Yeah.
So this is a completed one. Again, the porch is slightly different in design to what we recommend. But
if you have one this short, then you do want to put the partition in the middle that will, because a nosy little dog, a nosy little badger is just going to put its head right in that.
Mm-hmm. And also on this design, I don't think it is on the design we'll be sending out. No. But to also improve the waterproofing, this design does have a slanting roof, which is this top bit here, you would just cut a slat down the middle. Which, if you watch the bird box video, we explain how to do that as well.
But that is the sort of thing where we can do it here. We can do it when we've got the resources, we've got all the clamps, we've got all the proper cutting tools, not just hand saws. But getting an angle like that on a piece of wood that long is really quite difficult to do well. So if what you can do at home with what you've got is make a box, and that's better than nothing.
Don't worry if it ends up being a roof.
But that's where it's saying, like, do look at getting the waterproofing over the top. If you've got some offcuts of old pond liner, maybe put that, old bits of roofing felt, put that over the top.
An old tube of polyseal works as well. It will work for the cracks. It will need replacing probably eventually, but yeah, an old tube of some sort of rubber cement would work.
And one thing you can do is just sort of prop it up slightly at this end.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a gap. And then you do want to be able to lift the lid off, but you don't want it to be easily lifted off.
Yeah, this is heavy. This isn't getting blown off in the wind.
And similar potentially to what we did last time with the bird box is just using little loops of the inner tube just to make little catches to hold it down. Because you might want to, like, during summer, you might want to come and you want to check the box, you want to check it's still solid, you want to check if it needs repairing, you want to clear out any nesting materials in the summer just to make sure that there's not a build-up of parasites, because hedgehogs are susceptible to parasites like fleas and things.
Be careful when you are cleaning out the box if you have had anything in there, because like for instance, they don't have baths and they do have fleas.
Wear a pair of marigolds, a pair of washing up gloves that you're not then going to use to do your washing up, just to clear them out, because otherwise, you may well get little. And the same goes with the bird boxes, actually. If you're cleaning out wildlife boxes, do wear some plastic gloves that are just going to come up quite high, that are going to protect you. So yeah, we've got the roof that comes off. It's waterproof. We've got the porch. We've got the walls.
Oh, really quick, actually, I will say, don't lift it off during the time that you think you might have one in there.
However tempting it might be to be
do not lift it off. If you're unsure and you want to see whether or not you do have a hedgehog in your hedgehog house, what you can do is slightly, during the day, so during their nighttime, you can slightly obstruct the front with some leaves or something, or like a stick that they can easily move. But if that's then moved, the chances are that you do have something living in there. It might be a mouse, it might be a rat, but wait until what time of year? Sort of in a month or so for now, really.
Wait until well into summer, because at the moment it feels like maybe we're in spring, but we are still technically, by some definition, still in winter, which means that things are still hibernating. And even as we come into spring is only the bit where things start to wake up. So they're still doing that thing where they're still using their cozy winter beds to keep protected. So wait until sort of midsummer before you do any of that. Yeah. Have we had any questions?
Really quick. So, same as always, any questions, shoot them at us. We will do our best throughout the day, and Hazel will also be answering questions. Julie Brown actually has said they love Royal Canin kitten biscuits. I give them to my garden hedgehogs and the ones that I foster. Oh, that's amazing, Julie.
I did not know you fostered hedgehogs.
That's wonderful.
Excellent news.
Yeah.
So if you rescue a hedgehog, it might be fostered by Julie Brown.
Oh, and I think, I'm not sure if this is right, Jane, but you've put rat question mark for maybe the predator question, which is, that is
that was one of my
fair.
guesses as
Yeah,
well, I think.
because
Like,
rats can be quite nasty as well. But yeah, no badgers. So if you if you see any badgers in your back garden, maybe
but they're
don't.
also wildlife, and we
Yeah.
also like them.
But no, but I was going to say, if you see any badgers in your back garden, maybe make the porch a bit longer and with a corner as well, just to give this a bit more armament. Make sure the hedgehogs are okay.
So we've got a beautiful hedgehog
Yeah.
veranda.
This morning has been a bit of a rush, so apologies for this not necessarily being Blue Peter standard.
What are you saying?
But here is one that we made earlier. Tom made earlier actually, and also Tom has also said this one here is made out of hard wood, which means you can put it in your garden like this. It takes longer to rot. If you're using soft wood, you might want to paint the outside, but with non-toxic chemicals. So you do not want to use treated wood, because again, like the bird boxes, they're going to be up against it. Do not use treated wood. But if you're using really, really soft wood, you might want to paint the outside. You can treat. Again, not bright pink or bright yellow, something natural.
You can paint some images on it. Like if you want to paint something that looks pretty, you want to do. Oh, hello. So Robin just went right past my ear. That was quite exciting. So we're just wrapping up here. Hold on, we've got colleagues walking past in the.
Ian wants to be part of the live stream.
Ian just really wants to be in the live stream. So
yeah,
you can paint like a little design on the outside. You can make it so it looks nice. You can stain it so it matches the outside, so it matches your shed, it matches your fence. It can fit with the design of your garden. You can make them look really quite nice. And yeah, you do get ones with pretty designs, but just make sure that they are in fairly low key colors. They're not in sort of bright pinks and bright yellows, and probably not using like spray paints or anything that's highly toxic. But yeah, you can do pretty little natural color designs.
Right,
so I think we should wrap up. Next week we've got something a little bit different, haven't we? So
we have something different next week.
We've evicted.
Oh no, we do. Yes, I am not here next week.
Well, you are here. You're here next week.
Here.
But I'm not here. I am going to be in Blythe, up in Newcastle, and I am going to be planting reed beds. So TCV have been asked to come in and do a project planting reed beds up there on the northeast coast. So I'm going to be up there volunteering for TCV for that project for a week. So I'm going to
be on holiday.
It's not a holiday, it's working hard. So it's going to be Close to Nature live stream on tour with me. Still not quite figured out the logistics of maybe there'll be someone else who's there in it. Who knows? But yeah, we'll be going there next week. And that should be interesting, something a little bit different. I'm quite excited about learning about
I'm not jealous at all.
So thank you very much for joining us this week. And yeah, I'll be back next week. Alex has been chucked off.
I might just quit. Yeah, no.
So I've been Freya.
And I'm Alex.
And yeah, I'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.